It was raining the morning the knock came. Soft rain, the kind that makes the rosemary lean toward the kitchen window and turns the street to silver. The kettle hummed. I held my blue mug with both hands and watched steam rise like a small, kind cloud. The house smelled like toast and lemon soap. Quiet, steady, familiar. Through the glass, I saw a dark coat and a patient face. I wiped my fingers on a towel and opened the door. "Miss Clark?" the man asked, calm. "Detective Ruiz." He tipped his head toward the rain. "I'm sorry to trouble you. May I come in?" He stood just inside the mat, the way polite people do when they are about to put something heavy on your table. "Your son gave your name last night. He said he was with you." My throat remembered how to swallow before my mind did. My son, Evan, had sent a text near midnight. "You up?" I wasn't. I saw it at 6 a.m. with the kettle. Before I could write back, this came. "With me?" I asked, quiet. "When?" "Between 9 and midnight," he said. "He says he never left your house." The kettle clicked off. The clock above the stove made itself loud for a second. I looked at the ring dish by the sink, spare key, bobby pin, and a tiny folded paper that says, "Breathe." I thought of my shift at the clinic library last night, the soft hum of the copier, the lemon cleaner on the desk, the way I swiped out at 9:03 and walked home under a sky that seemed to hold its breath. "Tea?" I asked. He nodded. I poured. Steam softened the space between us. "I was at work," I said. 9 to 9. The desk has a camera. I can print the log." I opened the window a finger's width. New air moved through the room. "I won't make a scene," I added, half to him, half to the house. "I'll show you what I have." He set a card on the table. "Any video helps," he said. "We also have footage at the corner store. We're trying to match times." At 10, my cousin Leo dropped a flash drive through the mail slot with a note. "Library cam, timestamp. Paper feels different than screens." At 11, my neighbor Mrs. Chang texted, "Doorbell caught footsteps 11:26. Want it?" People who live near kitchens learn early how to help without stirring blame. At noon, Evan walked in with rain on his shoulders and a smile that had fooled me when he was 8 and lost a coin. "Mom," he said, too bright, "tell him we were here." I set 3 cups on the table and slid the small drive next to them. "Sit," I said, my voice even. "We'll start with this." Evan's eyes went to the flash drive, then to the window, then back to me. He smiled the way people smile when they want a room to forget what it already knows. I did not shout. I did not accuse. I poured tea. I set the bowl for phones by the fruit and nodded at it. The house held steady. The garden pressed its green face against the glass. The truth was small and quiet and already in the room. It would play on my old laptop in a minute and destroy the story my boy had tried to hang on my name. I would not let him drown us both. I would bring paper and light. I would keep our kitchen a kitchen.
I grew up in a kitchen that knew how to hold a day. Tea on the stove, the window fogging and then clearing, the rosemary by the sink leaning toward the light like a small, brave animal, the door closing with that soft, polite click, even when the radio was low. I keep a ring dish by the sink the way my mother did, spare key, a bobby pin, and a tiny folded paper that says, "Breathe." It sounds silly written down. It helps. My name is Helen Clark. I like simple, steady things. I work at the clinic library 3 days a week. I know the faces of people who are trying to be brave without telling anyone. I know how to say, "Take your time," and "You're next," so a room full of worry can exhale a little. At home, I keep a binder with tabs: house, bills, health, work, notes. A few years ago, I added one more: Evan. Paper does not fix a sun. It keeps me steady when the floor feels like it might tilt. Evan is my boy. He came into the world with a surprised look and hands that opened and closed like he was already telling me he had plans. As a little kid, he lined up toy cars with the care of a man painting a porch. He would bring me a wilted daisy from the yard and say, "Serious, for your desk." And I would put it in a jam jar and pretend it was a rose. He loved stories. He loved anything with wheels. He loved being the helper. When I took cookies out of the oven, he would stand on a chair and hold the towel like a grown-up. His father left when Evan was 8. Not a slammed door leaving, a slow fade. He moved 3 towns over. He sent texts with "proud of you" and "soon," and sometimes a card with a gift card inside. He is not a bad man. He is not a steady one. You can't hang a house on that. I learned how to make soup on Wednesdays. I learned to rub wax on a sticking latch. I learned to write "on time" next to the light bill and mean it. Evan learned to be funny. He learned to carry groceries without being asked. He learned that people can love you and still not show up. The first 2 lessons helped him. The last one did not. Teenage years turned him bright and quick. He could charm a teacher and talk a coach into one more try. He could make our neighbor Mrs. Chang laugh in the middle of a bad week. He also found ways to make small trouble into a habit. A late library fine, a broken bike light, a lie about where he was that did not need to be a lie. Little things, then larger ones. He wanted to be the person who makes the room smile. He did not want to be the person who leaves early to be at the bus stop for work on time. I love him anyway. Love is not a door you close when people get noisy. After high school, he tried a little of everything. Warehouse work, then rideshare, then delivering packages. Money slid through his hands like a wet ribbon. He would get a bonus and buy 3 things that made him look like the man he wanted to be, then call me and say, "Can you spot me till Friday?" We fought in small ways. I made rules I could keep. I would say, "No cash. I'll fill your fridge. I'll drive you to an interview. I'll go with you to set up a payment plan. I won't be your bank." He would roll his eyes and kiss my head and say, "You're a good mom," and then forget what I had just said and ask again next week. There were good seasons. He held a job at the auto parts place for almost a year. He brought home a jar of screws for me because he said, "Every house needs extras." He fixed my loose cabinet handle with a steady hand and looked proud when the door swung right. He started sading for a car. He sent me a picture of a used blue sedan with a caption, "Soon." Then the manager changed. His hours got cut. The car became later. He went back to delivering. He told me, "I like the road," like a man who does not want to say, "I don't like being told what to do." There were friends who felt like detours. Boys who liked late nights and plans that start with, "We could just," and end with someone paying for something that was not theirs. There was a woman, Jen, with quick eyes and quick laughs who could make Evan feel like he was the best version of himself for an hour and then forget his name for 2 days. They were not bad people. They were weather. He became a man who went outside without a coat on purpose to feel something. I kept my routines, because routines keep me. Tea in the morning, soup on Wednesday, the window open a finger's width, even if it is cold, because houses need to breathe. I kept the binder. Behind the Evan tab, I wrote, no cash, yes to rides, yes to receipts, no to lies. I wrote breathe more than once as if writing it would remind my lungs. It worked as well as anything. The neighborhood around me is small and kind. Mrs. Chang lives across the street. She sees everything without being nosy. She leaves oranges on my step when the light looks tired. Mr. Lopez is retired, but not retired from brooms. He sweeps his porch like it is a job. He fixes small things with a laugh. My cousin Leo lives 5 blocks down. He loves trees, paper ones and the green ones. He works part-time at the clinic front desk and part-time as the person everyone calls when a printer refuses to print. He is the one who texts, "You need the log?" And then, "Check your email." And then, "I left the flash drive under the mat." He is my emergency list in human form. Evan has been on the edge of something for a year. A ticket he didn't pay. A payment plan he planned to plan. A late bill that turned into a fee. He would call at 11 and say, "Can I crash for a night?" And I would say yes, because my house is not a door I lock on my child when it rains. We would make tea and talk. He would tell me about an idea, buy wholesale car parts and sell them online, fix phones in a parking lot, start a moving company with a friend who drives a truck, sometimes. He loves the part where a plan is a story. He stumbles on the part where a plan remembers it is work. 3 months ago, he came for soup and left his backpack by the table. It was heavier than it looked. He went to the bathroom. I did not look inside. I am not a detective. But something told me the edges of his life had gotten sharper than he knew. He came back and saw my face and said, "Too fast. It's tools." I nodded. He ate 3 bowls and told me jokes. Babies are jokes. Rent is not. 2 weeks ago, there was a burglary 2 streets over. A corner store that sells milk and bread and phone chargers. A kid working late called the police at midnight. "Hoodie," he said. "Fast." The morning after, Evan looked tired and bright, the way he does when he thinks he has outrun his own shadow. He said, "We should go for a drive. Get out of this neighborhood for a while." I said, "I have work." And he said, "Later then," and left without finishing his toast. I do not have proof that he was near that store that night. I had the sound my kitchen makes when the air goes wrong.
He owes a man named Gary. I know because a man with a too clean jacket and a smile that didn't reach his eyes stood on my porch last month and asked, "Is Evan around?" like we were neighbors. He used the word marker, which is a word I have only heard in movies where people run out of luck. I said, "No." He looked at my ring dish like it might hold cash. He looked at the camera on my doorbell and smiled at it like a cat. He left without bothering to knock again. I put my hand on the door after he was gone and said out loud, "No," to the wood, because sometimes wood needs to be reminded. Evan is not bad. He is not good at leaving rooms that are not good for him. He is a man who wants to be liked more than he wants to be early. He is a man who wants to be saved without asking how saving works. He is my son. I love him. My mother used to say, "Keep the kitchen a kitchen." She meant set the table, pour tea, tell the truth in short words. She also meant hold the bleeding thing with a clean towel. She said it about tomatoes and knees. It works for bigger things too. I have spent years using tea and towels and truth in short words to make a life with this boy. I have learned to be calm when I want to cry. I have learned to wait when waiting is the only way not to break something that has to bend. Now the detective was in my house with rain on his shoulders. He said, "Your son gave your name." He said, "Alibi." He said, "Between 9 and midnight." I thought about the desk at the clinic library, the way the copier hums when no one is in the room, the login log that prints if you ask it to, the camera that watches so staff can call security if we need to. I thought about swiping out at 9:03, walking home slowly under the streetlights, unlocking the door with the spare key that lives in the ring dish at the sink. I thought about how I could tell him all that and still not save my boy from the part of the night I did not own. I poured the detective tea because that is what I do when a big thing wants to make a scene in my kitchen. Tea makes everything sit. He set his card on the table so I could see his name and not feel like I was talking to a coat. "Any video helps," he said. "We have a timestamp from the store, 11:26. If your son was with you, we need to see him, or you need to tell me what you want me to see. I know that sounds sharp. I'm trying to be plain." I called Leo because there is no reason to pretend I did not need help. "Library cam, timestamp," he said. 10 minutes later, a courier in a raincoat slipped a flash drive through my mail slot with a note that said, "Paper feels different than screens." Leo and his jokes. He's right. His message added, "I printed your swipe out, 9:03. I sent the desk cam clip, 9:02, you in frame, 9:04, empty desk." At 10:30, Mrs. Chang texted, "Doorbell caught footsteps, 11:26, wanted." She doesn't ask for details. She just stands near when weather moves in. Mr. Lopez washed his broom and looked like he could guard a door with it if needed. At 11:45, Evan texted, "You up?" I didn't see it. At 11:59, never mind. At 12:15 a.m., nothing. At 8:03 a.m., the detective knocked. I have a foam bowl by the fruit bowl because dinners are for faces. When Evan comes for soup, he tosses his phone in it like a kid tossing a hat on a rack. When people put a phone away on purpose, a room gets its shape back. Today, I put the bowl on the table before anyone arrived. I opened the window a finger's width. I set out the blue mug and 2 plain ones. The flash drive sat beside them like a small thing heavy with truth. Evan came in at noon with rain on his shoulders and that smile he has, older now, useful some places, useless here. "Mom," he said, too bright, "tell him, we were here." I do not know what he thought the flash drive was, a present, a threat, a trick. He saw it. His eyes flicked to the window, to the bowl, to my face. He smiled the way people smile when they want a room to forget what it already knows. My hand found the edge of the table like it always does when I need to make something sit. I did not shout. I did not accuse. I poured tea and asked for phones. He sighed and let his drop in the bowl. The detective nodded and did the same. We sat like people who were about to watch a short movie no one wanted to be in. I plugged the drive into my old laptop with the missing key that Leo keeps promising to replace. The screen lit. The clip loaded. Leo's note in the corner said, "Timestamp in lower right." My face came into view at 9:02, fuzzy in gray light because the desk camera is old and tired. I was wearing my cardigan and my mother's scarf because the desk chairs always make my neck cold. I swiped out. I waved at the security camera because I am that person. I walked out of frame. The time clicked to 9:04. The desk was empty. The detective took a sip of tea and set his cup down without making a sound. Evan leaned in like a boy watching a train and hoping it would go another way. He said again, "We were here," voice thin to a string. "Between 9 and midnight?" the detective said, even. "I was at work," I said. "I came home at 9:15. I made tea. I went to bed. No one came." I looked at Evan. "This is not an argument. This is the night I had." "Mom," he said, soft now, shaking his head just enough to look like he believed he could make my face change truths. I reached for the ring dish and unfolded the tiny paper that says, "Breathe." I did. I looked at his hands. He had always had such good hands. I wanted to hold them and make him 5 again. I did not reach. I let the video sit there and say the thing I could not say with cries or sermons. It said, "I was not your alibi." The rest would unravel on its own. I thought then of all the small places where I could have said no and chose quiet. The ticket he ignored, the friend with the clean jacket, the backpack by my table, the way the doorbell cam could catch footsteps and not names. I thought too of the rules I wrote in my binder. No cash. Yes to rides. Yes to receipts. No to lies. They were lines I made to hold me steady, not to hold him. There are some storms you can only hold the door closed against for so long. I looked at Detective Ruiz and said, the sentence I had been writing in my head all morning. I set my hand on the cool edge of the table the way I do when a day needs me to stay in my body. "We're going to say what happened," I told Evan. Plain. He looked at the laptop like it might decide to turn itself back on and show a different night. "We were here," he repeated, but his voice had shrunk. He glanced at Detective Ruiz, then at me. "Come on, Mom." I slid the bowl toward him with a small motion. "Phones," I said again, because sometimes the second ask is the one that works. He had already dropped his in. The detectives sat there too, like a line we all agreed to. Ruiz took a sip of tea and kept his voice even. "Evan, we have footage from the corner store at 11:26, he said. "We have a person in a dark hoodie with a stripe on the sleeve. We have a partial shot of a license plate when the car pulled out. We need to put all the pieces next to each other." "I don't even have a car," Evan said quick. "I was here." "Not between 9 and 12, I said. "I was at work. You texted at 11:45. I didn't see it. I went to bed." He tried to smile. It looked like the one he used when he was 8 and had a coin behind his ear. "You mix nights up sometimes. You're busy. You get tired." I reached for the ring dish and unfolded the tiny paper that says, "Breathe." I did. I looked at his hands. "I do," I said. "Last night isn't one of them." The detective set his cup down without making a sound. "Ms. Clark," he said to me, "you mentioned a desk log and a camera. Do you mind if we copy those? And your neighbor texted me. Doorbell footage at 11:26. Your son's friend. Mr. Lopez is sweeping. He says he'll stand by his fence if anyone tries the shed door again." The word "again" landed and sat. I stood. "Give me 10 minutes, I said. "You can plug that in." I nodded at the flash drive. "Leo sent the clip. I'll print the swipe." I pulled my binder, slid the work tab open, found the clinic card with the IT number, and dialed. Paper and people, both. In the back room, the little printer moaned and then did its job. 9:02, log out, the line read. I printed a second copy because paper tears. I wrote the time in the margin of my own. Walked home, 9:15. Tea, bed. I set both by the laptop. The detective made a neat stack with the flash drive case, his card, and the copies. He likes paper too. There was a knock. Mrs. Chang, raincoat on, hair in a clip, calm as always. "You texted. I brought it on a flash. 11:26. She handed it to Detective Ruiz like a casserole at a wake. Useful, generous, no fuss. "It's the sidewalk," she added. "Hood up, tall. He went past and came back 5 minutes later. Went down the side of your house." Her eyes flicked to me and then to Evan. "I made tea," she said quietly. "If anyone needs." "Thank you," I said. I wanted to pull her into the room and have her sit and be my mother for 5 minutes. Instead, I took the drive and put it beside Leo's. Neighbors are a kind of family you earn by telling the truth at your door. Evan pushed his chair back a fraction, sat again, pushed, sat. He wiped his palms on his jeans. "This is ridiculous," he said, aiming his words at the corner of the ceiling. "I was here at 9. We watched the game. We ate popcorn." "We don't have a TV," I said. The sentence sounded almost funny in my mouth. It was not. He shut his eyes. Ruiz leaned in just enough to be kind. "Look," he said, voice like a chair that doesn't squeak, "you don't have to tell me anything today. You can call a lawyer. If you want to tell me something to get out ahead of it, now is the time. The first person to tell the truth usually gets the better end when people start sorting responsibility. Your mother's not part of this. That much is clear." Evan laughed once, a sound that had air than humor. "She's always part of it." And in a way, that was the truest thing he had said all morning. He turned to me. "He said he'd come here if I didn't find him something." He murmured low like a boy under a blanket. "I thought if I dropped it here, if they found it here, he'd stop coming to my place. I was gonna pick it up at 6 before you woke up." The room tilted. Then it settled because my kitchen knows how to. "Dropped what?" I asked, very calm. "Where?" He didn't answer. He looked at the window. He looked at the ring dish. He looked at his hands. He said, "In the shed. Under the potting bench." Mrs. Chang's flash drive became a small, heavy thing in my palm. I set it down. "We are going to pause," I said. "We're going to take the friend's name when you're ready. We're going to look in the shed with the detective. We're going to print everything we have. We are not going to shout." Evan pressed his fingers to his eyes. He nodded. "Gary. His name is Gary. He knows people. He has a truck. Nobody named Gary with a clean jacket should be near my door," I said dry. The mouth Ruiz twitched like a man who would like to laugh if he weren't in a coat. "We can go look at the shed now. Miss Clark, do you consent to a search?" Pause. I am sure Mrs. Chang was not a dinger. She only had a doorbell. In this edited text, the doorbell footage is implied to be from her censor, but the promoter wants to allude to Mr. Censor's name. You can ask me to wait for a warrant. I'll respect that. I have learned, as a woman who keeps a house, that saying yes with a boundary is better than saying no for too long. You can look in the shed and under the porch, I said. Not the inside of my house, not my closet, not my drawers. If you need those later, you'll bring paper. He nodded. That's fair, he said, and stood. Mr. Lopez was already at his fence, broom in hand, as if the stick could be a line. You good? He asked. We will be, I said. He tipped his head toward the side of my house. Footsteps last night, he said. I thought raccoon. Your son walks like a raccoon when he's trying to not be loud. We're going to the shed, I said. The door creaked because I have not oiled it in a month. I will, now. The potting bench sat with its neat mess, old pots, a bag of soil, a trowel Leo bought me when my wrist hurt. Ruiz crouched, slid his hand under the slats, and pulled out a duffel that did not belong to my life. Black, heavy, wet. He set it on the grass. He did not open it. He looked at me. We can do this here or at the station, he said. Here, I said. With paper. He nodded and pulled on gloves that came out of his pocket like manners. He unzipped. Boxes with logos, phone chargers in shrink wrap, a case of cigarettes with a tax stamp that looked like a small stamp stuck on the wrong letter, receipts rubber banded together, corner store name at the top. He lifted one with 2 fingers and read the time. 11:20, he said. He said it back. Evan made a small sound like a balloon losing air. He began and stopped. I was going to put it back, he said, which is a sentence people say when they don't want to say the other one. Ruiz looked at the said door. Miss Clark, he said, your neighbor's camera caught someone at 11:26. We're going to look at that. It probably shows the person carrying this. It will not be you. He looked at Evan. You want to be the man who tells me who else was there, or do you want me to ask Gary with a warrant? Evan stared at the bag. He looked so tired. He looked 14. He looked 40. He drove. I walked. He said the shed was better than my apartment because moms don't get searched. He said if I gave him an alibi, he'd just take it to the flea on Saturday. And you gave my name, I said. Again, I did not shout. My voice had gone into that place my mother called the kitchen voice. It is the one you use when a pot boils and you don't want it to spill. He nodded. I thought, he said, I didn't think. We went back to the table. Ruiz plugged in Mrs. Chang's flash drive. A shadow in a hoodie moved across my porch at 11:26. The angle was lousy, like the camera was shy. The height was right. The shoes looked like the ones Evan wore when he thought they made him look fast. The chain link by Mr. Lopez's fence clinked quietly like a whisper. The shed door made its old creak. He will say that's anybody, Leo texted, which made me smile through a version of crying. His next text said, paper feels different than screens. He sent a still to my email. I printed it. The corner had the date. The focus was soft. The story was clear. Ruiz pulled a small notebook from his coat. He wrote down the times. He wrote down Gary. He wrote down duffel. Under potting bench. He wrote down consent, shed, porch. He did not write my name under suspect. He clipped his pen. He looked at Evan. You're going to come with me, he said. His voice stayed gentle. You're going to call counsel. Your mother will call one too? You're going to tell me the truth about Gary. If you want the best end of this, you will help us get him. You will stop using your mother's love like paper." Evan's mouth did a small thing I have seen since he was a boy, the little downturn that means he knows he has broken something that is not a toy. He looked at me, shame and hope, and an old habit that thinks a mother is a cover. He said, "Mom, I won't be your alibi. I will be your mother." He closed his eyes and nodded. Ruiz stood. He did not reach for Evan yet. He looked at me. "You can call someone," he said. He meant a lawyer. He also meant a friend. He meant Leo, Mrs. Chang, Mr. Lopez with the broom. I have learned to recognize that kind of kindness in a man who has to do his job in kitchens. I called Leo because he knows which lawyers have the softest hands and the steadiest clocks. He said, "Call Paige. She knows how to talk to boys like ours. She doesn't turn kitchen tables into stages." He sent a number. I called. A woman with a voice like a good chair answered. "Bring him down," she said. "Do not let him say anything without me." She told me what to write on a card. Paige, public defender, 12:30, and to put it in Evan's hand. I did. He held it like a $10 bill he hadn't earned. He nodded. "Okay," he said. Ruiz asked a question with his eyes. I nodded. He took out cuffs but did not use them in my kitchen. "He'll walk," he said to Evan. "Your mother will meet us there." He looked at me. "You did the right thing," he said. Not like a reward, like a sentence you put in your binder under notes when you need to read it later. After they left, the door made its soft click. The house exhaled. I sat. My hands shook. I set them around my blue mug and waited until they knew where to be. Mrs. Chang knocked once and pushed the door open with her hip. She set a plate of sliced oranges and a box of tissues on the table. "Do you need me to watch the rosemary?" she asked, and I laughed because it is exactly what someone who knows you would ask when there is nothing else to do. "Watch the house," I said. "I have to go. I'll bring soup later." She touched the card in my ring dish with one finger. "Breathe," she said. "You are good at that." "I am," I said, and stood. On my way to the station, I called my ex-husband because there are rules about letting the other person who helped make a person know when the police have just taken them. "No cash," I said, before he could say hello. "No yelling. Meet me there. Bring your ID. Bring your ear." He started to argue and then didn't. "Okay," he said. "Okay." At the station, Paige met us in the lobby with a folder and a pen and eyes that have seen boys try to cover themselves with their mothers and learn to lift the edge of that blanket and slide a paper underneath that says, "A different way." She sat with Evan. She spoke for him when he could not. She told him to drink water. She told him he could help himself by telling the truth about Gary. She told him he could help me by not using my name like a tool. In my small voice, in a small room, I told the story I had. 9:02, swipe out. 9:18, T. 11:26, doorbell clip. Flash drive, duffel. The words sounded like a woman writing something down on a recipe card to keep from crying on the onions. "You're doing fine, Paige." "You're doing fine," Paige said. Short words. That's the trick. Evan was charged. It did not break my house. It changed its sounds. He was released on conditions later that week because Paige did what she does, got a judge with a calendar and a deep breath to see my boy through her eyes. He has to check in, He has to stay away from Gary. He has to do small, boring things at exact times. He has to show up. Love cannot be assigned. Conditions can. I went home to my rosemary and my kettle and my binder. I wrote on the inside of the pantry door in my careful hand, breathe. Paper before panic. Lawyer. Call Leo. Call Paige. No cash. Soup on Wednesday. Window open a finger's width. I made soup and put half in my freezer because girls who keep kitchens think about later even when now is loud. I lit a candle because my mother would have. I folded the tiny paper back into the ring dish. I did not sweep much. I didn't need to. Morning comes whether you wash the cups or not. I washed the cups. We had turned, not toward easy, toward a room where my son's lies do not stand taller than my door, toward paper and light, toward a kitchen that kept itself a kitchen.
Some mornings still begin with rain. In my new apartment, it taps the window in a soft way, like it knows not to rush me. The kettle hums in a lower key than the one I had before. I stand by the small sink with my blue mug and watch the rosemary and lavender on the balcony move a little in the wind. The room smells like tea and clean air. The door makes a crisp, clean sound when it closes. I like that sound. It says, "You are safe here." I put the ring dish on the windowsill with 3 smooth stones inside: beach, river, backyard. The dish is not empty. It holds small, honest things. I touch the locket at my throat and think, this is enough. When I walked away, I did not walk away from love. I walked away from a house of harm. I walked away from the idea that love means rescue, that love means emptying myself to fill someone else. I walked toward a quiet life that I can keep. I walk toward a kind truth I can say out loud. I am a mother, not a magician. On Sundays at 7, the phone rings or it does not. When it rings, I make tea and sit by the window. Sometimes we laugh about a customer at the bakery who wanted a cake shaped like a hat. Sometimes we are quiet. Sometimes she says, "It was hard," and I say, "I know." And we breathe together for a minute. When it does not ring, I keep the hour. I say a short prayer. I water the pots. I tell myself, love does not fail just because it waits. Work is steady. I greet people with shaky hands and tired faces and say, "You're okay. We've got you." I mean it. After work, I walk home past a big maple tree and look up through its green hands. I make soup. I eat it by the window. I wash the bowl. I sleep. The night is quiet in a way that feels like safety, not like worry. Once I walked past our old street. A new person stood at the gate holding a plant in a clay pot. We nodded at each other like neighbors in a soft movie. I kept walking. I did not need to go in. I did not need to stand in those rooms to say goodbye. I had already said it with clean sheets, with a note under a rosemary jar, with a door closed gently and a key placed in a hand that was not mine. I still visit the park where Daniel asked me to marry him. The big maple holds its steady shape above me. I tell him that the ring is gone, but the promise did not break. I kept us safe in the best way I knew. I kept our daughter in the light I could offer. I kept a soft part of myself from turning to stone. I tell him thank you. I tell him I am learning to live in a new circle, not metal, but mornings. Forgiveness did not come like a parade. It came like rain after a dry spell. Slow, quiet, real. I forgave her for the ring because she is more than that choice. I forgave myself for the years I thought I could fix what I did not cause. Some days, forgiveness sits by the door and looks at me like a cat that comes and goes as it pleases. I open the door when it knocks. I do not chase it down the street. If you are where I was, I want to tell you this in plain words. You can love someone and still say no. You can be kind and still have a lock. You can leave a house and keep your heart. You can hold a line and hold a hand, but not at the same time, not always. Get help. Tell the truth to someone who can listen without flinching. Put your plan on paper. Tape it under a jar if you must. Let go with love. There are small joys that do not seem like much until they are your life. A warm mug in your hands. A balcony with 2 pots that keep trying. A text that says, "I made it through today." A bowl you made yourself, a little crooked, holding lemons. The sound of your own key in your own door, the soft click that means you chose a life you can live in. I do not wait for a ring to tell me I am married to my memories. I wear a locket. I wear soft clothes. I wear my quiet like a shawl. When guilt comes, I give it a chair and a time limit. When hope comes, I let it stand in the sun as long as it wants. When fear comes, I make tea and breathe until it leaves. The rosemary on the balcony likes Sunday water and a little talk. I say, "You are doing well." It does not answer, but it leans toward the light like it understood. I think I am doing the same. On good days, I can feel it. On hard days, I trust it. People ask sometimes, "Did you really walk away forever?" I say, yes. I walked away from what was killing me and hurting her. I walked toward a life that could hold both our chances. Forever is a long word. What I mean is this: I will not go back to that house, that role, that river that was pulling me under. I will keep my door open to help and closed to harm. I will love my daughter for all my days. I will be good to the woman I am. This is how my story ends for now, with rain that does not scare me, with a kettle that hums, with a door that closes gently, with a garden in 2 small pots breathing in and out. I lift my mug. I look at the street. I say, thank you to the quiet, to the truth, to the part of me that learned to stand up and walk. I walked away forever from drowning. I stayed in love. I stayed.
I oil the shed door now. It doesn't creak. I put a latch on the inside with a small lock you can open with 2 fingers and a key. Mr. Lopez tested the hinge and the lock and nodded like a man who approves of a door. "Good sound," he said. "Keeps raccoons honest." We both grinned. Evan and I are learning how to be mother and son without a cover between us. He texts before he comes. He stands on the mat and asks, "Soup?" instead of walking in and saying, "Mom." He sweeps the porch when he is antsy instead of opening the shed. He brings receipts when I buy him boots because sweeping makes his feet hurt. He shows me the texts from the job center. He shows up for group on Thursday and says, "My name is Evan," and does not add a joke. He gives me $10 for restitution on Sundays with tea and says, "It's not much." And I say, "It is." And we write it down together. His father brings oranges and sits on Thursdays when he is asked. He holds his tongue more often than he doesn't. He texts me. He was on time, like he has found a new religion. I keep counseling because mothers need rooms where their own sentences go first sometimes. I sit in a chair that doesn't squeak and say, I did not fail, out loud. And my counselor says, say it again. And I do, and it helps. I say, I will not be his alibi. And she nods and I breathe, and the sentence counts. My house feels like itself again, not the same as before. Houses keep what happens in them, but kind. The ring dish holds only keys and the little paper that says breathe. The binder holds copies of things that made rooms softer. The library swipe, the doorbell clip still, the quartz one line disposed. I put them in a clear sleeve behind notes with a tab that says that night, not because I need to look at them, but because knowing where they live keeps my brain from rehearsing a lie. Mrs. Chang still leaves oranges when the light looks tired. Mr. Lopez still sweeps like it's a job. Leo still texts, paper feels different than screens when he knows I'm not to scroll instead of call. Detective Ruiz still drinks his tea slow when he stops by to return a pen. Paige sends an email once in a while that says, how's he doing? And I write, boring. And she writes back, good. I learned to forgive in threads, not in a speech, not all at once. A small stitch every time Evan does a Thursday group without me reminding him. A small stitch when he says no to the friend with the clean jacket who smiles at cameras. A small stitch when he stands on the mat and sets his phone in the bowl without sighing. A small stitch when he hands me a 10 on a Sunday with tea and writes paid on a line in his own hand. The cloth is holding. We will keep stitching. I do not let my son's name be a blanket over my mistakes. I make new ones. He makes his. We say they are ours in short words. We use towels on small bleeding things. We call Paige for the rest. We make tea. We open the window. We breathe. We keep the kitchen a kitchen.
Some mornings still begin with rain. It taps the kitchen window in that soft way, like someone who knows the house. The kettle hums. The rosemary leans toward the glass and stands back up, brave and green. I open the window of finger's width and let the good air in. The bowl by the fruit holds a phone without a fight. The rin dish holds a key and a tiny paper that says breathe. The binder sits on the shelf with a tab that reads that night, and one that reads plan, and one that reads Evan, with lines under it that say group, Thurs, job, Mon through Fry, check-in, twos/sat, restitution, son, soup, wed. It looks boring. It is holding. On Thursdays, Evan stands in my doorway with his hands empty and says, group, and I nod and hand him a cup to go. On Sundays, he brings $10 and writes it in the book and doesn't try to make me think it is more with a speech. On Mondays, he sets the next therapist card on the fridge without looking to see if I saw him do it. On Wednesdays, we eat soup without making it into a moment. We make it into dinner. That is better. People still knock. Sometimes it is trouble. Sometimes it is oranges. I have learned to look through the glass and take a breath and tell the difference. If it is trouble, I call Leo, Paige, Ruiz. If it is oranges, I open the door and say, thank you, and put them in a bowl and remind myself that not every knock is a storm.
If you walked into my kitchen today, you'd see 2 cups on the table, a plate with bread, the good towel folded by the sink, and a little flash drive and a clear sleeve behind a tab in a binder. Not because I like to keep pain, but because it keeps me from wondering what happened when doubt tries to rehearse a lie at 2 a.m. You would hear the soft click of the lock, the kettle's low hum, and maybe the broom on Mr. Lopez's porch, and the sound of a mother humming under her breath because a house remembers songs, even when it has been too quiet for a while. Here is what I learned, and I keep it taped inside the pantry where I can see it when I reach for mugs. Start with T. Tell the truth in short words. Paper before panic. No cash. Ask for help. Let neighbors stand near. Call a lawyer before you promise. Keep a towel for small cuts. Soup on Wednesday. Window open. Breathe. It looks small written down. It is enough. It kept me from breaking the dishes. It kept my son from using my name as a door he could hide behind. It kept the kitchen a kitchen. On the first clear day, after all of this, I stood at the sink and watched the light make a clean line on the counter. I opened the window. The rosemary leaned in. Evan knocked and set his phone in the bowl without being asked, then stood on the mat and said, "Soup," like a person practicing nouns and times. I smiled and said, "Yes," because some things, even after storms, are that simple. We did not save the night at 11:26 with crying or shouting. We saved our mornings with paper and light and a window open a finger's width. We saved my name from being a story. We kept our house steady while the rain did what rain does and the kettle did what kettles do, and a boy learned how to be a man without using his mother's love like a screen. I will not be his alibi. I will be his mother. That is enough.